The 1907 Kenora Thistles will forever hold the title as the smallest city to ever win the Stanley Cup. The complete story of the hockey team's unlikely championship is now being told in a new book published by Rat Portage Press. Jonathan Wilson has the story.
The story of the Kenora Thistles has been legendary in hockey circles for over a century. Hockey historian and author Eric Zweig was just a boy given this miniature Stanley Cup when he first noticed the Thistles name engraved on it, and he's been enamored with the team ever since.
Well, I guess I've always been fascinated with the idea that a tiny town of, people used to always say 4,000, but I think it was closer to 6,000. That's what I say in the book. Could win the Stanley Cup at any time. And yet this tiny team from a tiny town could still beat them and win the Stanley Cup. And I've always been intrigued with that.
Kenora publisher Rick Brignall, who owns the Rat Portage Press, contacted Zweig a few years ago to write the definitive book on the team. Engraved in History was published earlier this year.
And he had always told me over the years that someday he wanted to put together the sort of definitive history of the team, an adult book for adults, and he wanted me to write it. And he came to me, I guess 2 years ago, kind of mid-pandemic, and said we were going to do this, and he wanted me to do it. And I had to, I'm sorry to say that I actually had to think about it for a minute. And then, of course, I jumped on it because I thought if this book comes out and it's by somebody other than me, I'll be really disappointed in myself. So I said yes, and I'm glad I did, and it was a lot of fun to put it all together.
Zweig's research included interviewing grandchildren of the Thistles players and scouring old newspaper articles from the early 1900s, which he says were very descriptive and helpful.
The newspapers used to arrange for telegraph reports to be sent to the visiting team's city. So this was, pretty much play-by-play that's remarkably similar to what we'd hear on radio and TV today. And the newspapers would transcribe it word for word.
One endearing aspect of the Thistles is that they were mainly a homegrown Kenora team. Billy McGimsey, Tommy Hooper, Roxy Boudreau, and Tom Phillips were either born or grew up in what was then known as Rat Portage. Cy Griffiths moved there 6 years before the Cup victory, and all but Boudreau are now in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
And for whatever reason, 4 of these guys in Kenora, and others too, but the 4 core guys who would later be inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, something came together in Kenora where these guys got good enough as a team of local, homegrown, just boys who grew up into men. And they were still pretty young when they won the Cup. They're all in their early 20s. But something about this group, they just all came together.
The 1907 Thistles victory is noted on the inside rim of the Stanley Cup. The book Engraved in History is now available on Amazon or direct from Rat Portage Press. Jonathan Wilson, TBT News.